Welcome to episode 75 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with the PCF Lady herself, Diana Birkelbach, about all things PCF, primarily the virtual PCF component changes that have been made by Microsoft, and what she did to make her Colorful Optionset PCF virtual. So if you are a PCF developer or you would like to start, what a great episode to get started with two giants in the PCF field, Scott and Diana. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scott, my co-host. Can't wait to talk about PCF. Daryl, Scott, how's it going?
Can't get enough PCF. Absolutely. Yeah. Your thing is raising the bar. My thing is PCF, definitely. So yeah, really looking forward to this one. Yeah, no, it's good to see everyone. Yeah, it's been a fun week actually. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and I have to say, a lot of people are talking about getting back into the office, and getting, working with people face to face. And having moved to Canada now, I feel a little bit isolated. I'm kind of itching to kind of get back in there and, work as a team. I love that being able to sort of sit next to someone and just sort of, work out things and just point at things on the screen, and obviously not touching the screen, because that's a whole different thing. No, we don't touch the screens. No, we respect people's boundaries. But yeah, I'm really missing that, being able to kind of sitting down next to people in the team and working with them. So hopefully be able to do that soon. But yeah.
That's funny. I think developers probably have a higher health standard for the screen than they do for like shaking hands and everything else. So that's kind of funny way to look at it. Well, we'll actually stay mainly on topic this time and go straight to our guests. So today we have with us Diana Birkelbach, who is the Dynamics PCF Lady, a Microsoft MVP, a blogger, a Power Platform community super user, and a Dynamics 365 and Power Platform developer. Diana, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thanks
Diana.
for having me.
Yes. Yes. So this you've had a previous PCF tool, the Colorful Optionset PCF, and you recently posted a blog and talked about using some of the new shiny new features that are coming down the line related to PCF. And I thought this would be a great time to take the person, Scott PCF Duro, to take him and get him involved with someone else that's heavily into it, so I can sit back and learn as much as I possibly can, because I haven't touched PCF in probably 9 months. So anyway, but so first start off, what is the tool, and then talk about kind of some of the framework changes and how that affected the tool. So start off with that. What is this tool? What is the option set? Colorful option set.
Okay, so it's the first PCF I've ever made. I've learned with it. It was something. So I do Dynamics since, I don't know, a lot of years, since version
1.1 according to your blog. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yes, and it was something I've always wanted to have in Dynamics. Because during the time we've got this color in the customization, but we wasn't able to see it on the form. And I just wanted it there. And it was possible starting with the PCF. So I've made this one. It was 2 years ago or something. And this year I was in Berlin to the European Power Platform Conference, as the news about River Component was there. And of course, I directly saw the video from Scott and the announcement. Of course, I had to see it right away. I didn't have time right then. And yes, as soon as I got home, I started to move it to virtual. It was very easy following the blog from Scott. And just thought I could do a little more. I had it in my mind since a lot. Of time, I still have a lot of issues or ideas. I want to improve the component, but one step after the other. So first virtual component, then I started to make a few improvements like sorting and icons. And let's see, when I get up a little more time, we'll go to the next.
You mentioned about your blog. If anyone is building PCF components and they haven't checked out Diana's blog, then you're really, really missing out, because it's like a gold mine. It really is, of so much information. And what I love about it is the fact that, like you said, you kind of use that component as like a case study to build on it gradually. So, sort of the earlier posts are, okay, getting started, this is how you do it. And then as you go down the list, it kind of gets into more and more advanced topics and adds on stuff. I just love it. And it's laid out really, really nicely. And you've got all these different, you've got really nice screenshots. And I have to say that the PCF controls that you've built they are so beautiful. They really are. I mean, do you use them in your own projects where you work?
So I've made them for the community, but sometimes we use them too, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually I've posted it in the PCF gallery, and somebody asked there how to use it in the grid, and I thought, okay, that's a good idea, how to use it, and that made a PCF for the Colorful Optionset grid, so it's a family now. Yeah. And yes, as you said, I'm learning and I'm blogging that, and I hope I can help the others learn too.
Yeah, definitely. We'll put a link to it in the notes about this episode. But yeah, the grid, that's quite complex to move from just a single field to a grid. Did you what was the the kind of the significant challenges from getting from field, just a drop down, to suddenly having it inside a grid?
Well, I cannot say it was only one. There were so many. Well, I did a lot of HTML web resources before, and I had to get used with, I don't have to make the web API by myself. I have to get used with the functionality or the features that are offered, and what do I gain when I do that, and the real implementation, of course, that's part of. I have to do scrolling or some kind of paging, and I need to take care of columns, and the Fluent UI. It's a real huge help when you do something that want to look like Dynamics, but you have to take care of a lot of things until it's a real 100% the same. And yeah, I think that was the biggest issues.
So you mentioned Fluent UI then. So you're using Fluent UI across both of the controls.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Daryl, I mean, when you were building PCF controls, have you used Fluent UI at all? Because Diana's saying that it kind of gives you that ability to very quickly create like nice UI looking controls.
So the very first time I created one, it was just a iframe. So I didn't have any UI to it at all besides redirecting another URL. So that one I did not. I tried to do it for another one, and I was a little blown away by all the different features that come with it. And I was like, what do I use? What do I look at? And so I think I kind of got started a little bit on it, and then I got tasked with something else, and I had to have someone else kind of take over that project. So I kind of missed out on gaining some of that knowledge. So yeah, actually, last one I worked on, I think had jQuery used for most of it. And I was like, why is this all jQuery? Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, Diana's control. So there's a really good example of using React and Fluent UI, and you're using functional components inside React now, because we've talked quite a lot about like the differences between class components and functional components. And functional components definitely seems to be that's really the sort of the modern way of building controls inside React. I saw a recent post by you, very, very recent, I think it's in the last day or so, about the optimizations and using React Memo and pure components for class components. So, I mean, do you see what do you say that the kind of the biggest hurdle moving from someone like building jQuery or Vue or Angular or something like that, moving into using React? Because I think React is a kind of a requirement to use Fluent UI, but some people might see it as a little bit of a hurdle. what would be your advice to people?
So you saw that already. It's only one hour old, that post.
Oh.
How do you manage it?
I'm on a different
1
time
hour.
zone, so
Scott, what are you doing? Oh. He's got like a Google check thing that pops up every single time you post. Probably is what it is, or maybe PCF. Maybe that's what it is. Who knows?
Yes, because you have to think different. And when I started with React, it was a few years ago, but it was like, okay, that's not the way I used to think about programming. But I like it, and of course, I did a lot of HTML development before that, and I love the power. So I had it's hard to learn, but after that you love it, I think. And also I think the first you learn about class component, and after that you start with a new one, so with a function component and using React hooks. And that's also the point where you need a little time to get used to that, because that's again something different. The way the state it's outside the component, you have to get used with that and to know what's happening. Once you've got that too, I stayed with function component because I like the way I can take out parts of one component and to have it outside, and also even use it between more components without having to use high order components.
And increasingly, all of the samples are, that are out there are all in functional components as well. So, in terms of learning. But do you think, it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. Do you think it's best to start with PCF and learn that first, or would you say it's best to start with React and learn all of the, the kind of the key principles of React? Because there's a lot of courses out there, isn't there, in terms of how to program in React and how to understand React hooks and states and props and how to control rendering and all of those kind of things. There's a lot of that stuff which is out without PCF being in there. So which would you say is the best place to start if we're folks who are going to start afresh?
It's a hard question. It's a tough one. So when you program outside of PCF, you have to take care of a lot of other stuff that you have already done if you're using PCF. So you have the backpack, you have everything there prepared for you. And when I think about PCF, I think it's a little easier than making a whole HTML project or React project just for itself. But of course, you cannot start with that without knowing a little what's React and how it works. So I think a few small examples would help. And after that, I would go to PCF.
No, that's good advice, definitely. Well, of course, we're talking about the recent updates that you made for virtual controls, like you hinted on. So maybe you could tell people what that new feature is. It's it's in preview. It's just been released fairly recently. So just give people an overview what virtual controls are.
Okay, let's see if I tell it good enough. You know it better than me. So it's about.
He just looks like he knows it better. He doesn't really. He just.
He does.
He's all fluff. He's all fluff. There's nothing to discuss.
Yeah, Daryl knows me well. It's all fluff. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so virtual components are a way to use the platform own React and Fluent UI if you want to. So you don't have to bundle the React and Fluent UI inside your component, but it's not only that. You also are now really a part of rendering process from Power Platform, so from the forms and the views. And I've made in the blog a short video where you can see the difference in loading performance. And you don't have to measure it. In time you'll see it with the eye, and that's really great. So now we have pretty much the same power as the first party control set. I love it.
Performance is a big increase and a big reason to use it. What else would be advantages people find?
Yeah, so it's the performance, but not only for your control, but for the whole application, because it doesn't have to load that much on it.
But it reduces the bundle size as well. I suppose you could say that it's saving you on Dataverse cost, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch. I mean, that's a little bit. Maybe if you're using lots and lots of PCF controls and you really, really tie it on Dataverse storage, it might just push you over to needing to buy, some additional storage costs. But I mean, actually, the bundle size is significant. If you've got a really complicated control that bundled all of the Fluent controls, maybe you've got a control that uses like literally every single Fluent control, and obviously React as well. Then I mean, it goes down from megabytes to sort of under a megabyte.
Yeah. I haven't even thought about Dataverse costs, because I think the other one are pretty much bigger that we have in Dataverse. Yeah. But the loading on the site, so the network traffic that we are saving there, and also having just to think about to have this control a few times in the form, so we save really a lot on the form. And I remember what I wanted to say. So when we have this PCF, we don't have to change much from the standard control. There are just a few lines of code to change, and it's already a virtual one. So if we want to go back, and if there are problems, there are not much to change, and I like that too, because right now it's we cannot use it in production, but we can try it out and make it back if it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to downgrade your version of Fluent UI and the version of React that you're using, which is, I guess, it's just you can't get away from that. It's like, well, yeah, if we want to use the platform libraries, then obviously we're going to have to use the same version as the platform. But what's going to be interesting is what's going to happen in the future when things change, when the platform upgrades. It's going to be like, do you remember the whole jQuery, people using jQuery as part of the platform? And then suddenly jQuery was changed or it was no longer available and things started to break. Remember that whole kind of web resource?
That's a real problem, but also the other side, the other way around. I think in portals they are stuck with Bootstrap, a real old one, and they are waiting for the new one. It's not coming. That's not funny either.
No, exactly. So it does pose some interesting challenges. When you're in a situation where you're in complete control, you bundle everything and it's just running in its own sandbox almost. You don't have you only have the interface to the external world. So you've got this almost perfect abstraction. Whereas suddenly, so there's pros and cons. It's like all these things. Nothing's ever perfect.
So Scott, am I hearing that you really have no idea what they're going to do when they you don't have any, there's no supported availability if Microsoft updates the React, it will break your control? Is that what will happen? Or is it not that fragile?
I think the fact that in the manifest we are declaring the version of React and Fluent that this control requires, that is the fact that the manifest declares which version is then consumed by the Power Platform. So it's now up to the Power Platform to ensure that your control is given those versions of Fluent and those versions of React, which is what we never had that with web resources. We never had a manifest that said this web resource requires these libraries to be loaded. So I think that's the good news. There is a mature manifest file that defines a dependency. So any upgrades will have to work backwards compatible, and they have to make sure that it works, because we're saying, it's a supported mechanism. Well, it will be once it goes live, but it will be interesting to see how they do that, and if it has detrimental effect on performance, and, to have maybe multiple versions of libraries running at any one time. Certainly I found interesting things where now, because we're using the same React library as the platform and the same Fluent UI library as the platform, suddenly a lot of there are certain features in Fluent UI where the controls communicate across each other. So one control will communicate to another instance of the control, things like focus zone and stuff like that. Now that could never be possible before, because we always had a separate version of the Fluent UI loaded. But now, because we're using the same instance of those library, suddenly those controls now can communicate across instances of PCFs. So it does have some interesting side effects, which generally are positive, because it means that because it's closer to how those libraries were intended to be used in the first place. They weren't ever intended to be in these own separate React DOM rendering little islands inside the page. But yeah, that's good. I mean, I love your blog post on how you've converted your existing control. And again, it goes back to this point that your blog is so cool because it's so sort of like it reads like a book. That's what I love about it. You know what I mean? It's like you can start at the beginning and then you can read it like, what's the next chapter in the saga? What's going to happen? Oh, it's a plot twist.
Thank you.
Whereas my blog's just something happened and maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't.
But they are also very, very important stuff. So you Google and you find Scott's blog. So that's also very important.
Oh, that's just my secret of search engine optimization happening. It's something to do with the content as well. So what's the next in the saga? I mean, can you give us do you have anything planned for your controls? Anything that's going to happen in the future that's going to get added in?
So I have a few plans. So about thinking about colorful option sets. So I've made this icon and I've made the possibility to sort in the user language the options. That's not possible using only customization. There might be some requirements like have it filtered. Dependent option set could be an option too. Depend on multi-option set, make it multi-option set. There are so many stuff I would like to do when I have some time. I think that's the problem is to have too many ideas.
Last week we had Mark, and he was talking about he gets ideas in the shower, and then suddenly he's like, I've got to go and do that. I've got to go and do that. So, obviously, the solution to that is just clearly just not to shower, and then. But yeah, I mean, so what about Canvas? Because it's talking about these controls that you've built so far work brilliantly in model-driven apps because they solve a real significant challenge in model-driven apps, which is how do you create a beautiful looking experience for these kind of things? Whereas Canvas is such a different world, isn't it? Because people are already doing this kind of thing using the native controls that you get. But there is this point where you see, it sometimes makes my eyes water, some of the hacks that you have to go through to get to making some of this functionality in Canvas. And it never ends up being accessible because, all these strange uses of pop-up galleries and odd things like that. So have you got any plans to sort of move it into using it in Canvas?
Actually tried a few times. I'm fascinated about custom pages, and so I'm from the model-driven world, and the possibility of custom pages it's really huge, and I wanted to go there. So the grid is basically working. With colors, I have some issues, but at least as a grid, it's working. I have the functionality, but the colorful option set, so the field one, I actually don't know how to use it. So I get the options. I can show them. That's not a problem. The icons, the color, I can solve that. I'm sure I can solve that too. But I have no idea how to pass that option, the value. I didn't find a solution until now.
The Dataverse option set, the actual field from Dataverse, yes, with the metadata.
Just think about having a gallery on a custom page. And when I select one record, I want to show that value and so the options that corresponding for the selected record. And I don't know how to do it. Didn't find it out. I think the option set it's a little special, so I have the hard one. But I definitely try to go in that direction too.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? How different, although the PCF, the framework is identical and seemingly very simple, it would be, you'd forgive someone for thinking, that's easy. I can just, if I can write for model, I can go and make the same thing for Canvas and custom pages. But like you say, they're different, really different environments, and some things are there, some things are not, and actually I think fundamentally it's a different mindset as well. It's like a control that's built for Canvas is solving usually I think a different challenge, because Canvas makers or Canvas app or custom page makers generally are in a different mindset to model driven. In model driven, you're very metadata driven and very, your structure is very rigid, and you generally want everything to look the same. Whereas in Canvas and custom pages, it's like the opposite. Actually, you want to give people complete ability to change everything. Use a different color for your background, your border, and your hover, and your pressed, and all these different styles, which you'd never dream of exposing in model, because you want it to look consistently with the rest of the stuff. So yeah, I don't have the answers either, Diana. So,
but thinking in model-driven apps and custom page, I still try to make the same component to work in both. So on the form, on the view, and in custom page. Because only when I do that, I'm able to make the application I want to for the customer, and not being forced on limitations. So the problem is right now, when something doesn't work, I don't know, maybe will come this issue. So this problem will be solved in the future, or maybe it's not supposed to work that way. And sometimes it's really hard to find the real direction. The best part is in custom pages, I can use web API, so I can go around the limitations that I have in Canvas app.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned portals as well. I mean, so PCF is now GA in portals. I mean, do you see being able to use the colorful option sets in portals as a sort of like a kind of a key priority?
I didn't try it, but I've tried something else. I've tried some kind of option set PCF kind of matrix, and that worked already. So I think in that direction was absolutely no difference to the model-driven forms, and I was really happy with that. I'm really looking forward for the dataset PCF there.
Yeah, that'll be nice. Yeah, it's an interesting area, isn't it? Being able to customize that service in portals. And exciting. So, I mean, what's your wish list for the PCF? I mean, from if Microsoft, if the PCF team are listening, because obviously, they obviously, maybe they do listen, maybe I don't know, maybe they do. I don't know. We've got at least 4 listeners, so if one of those listeners. Yeah, if one of those listeners is the PCF team, what would you ask for? What would be on your wish list?
You should have told me before that. I have so many and I won't remember the right one.
Oh, no. I didn't want to put you on the spot. Though, maybe that's the feedback. If there's too many to talk about, just get in touch. We'll have a conversation.
The most important for the moment, because as I said, there are small issues that I have to go through, and some kind of showing the error for the PCF. Something in the PCF has actually an error that I would notify the form somehow, and I think for now it's not the supported way to do that.
I tell you what, one of mine would be. One of mine, which is really about supporting the maker experience, because like we talk about fusion teams, fusion teams is still a big thing. Microsoft's are really pushing fusion teams still, and as PCF developers, we're trying to make our components as easy as possible to use by makers, so that we don't then have to sort of do it for them. We say, we've built this control to solve this particular problem. Here you go, you can kind of use it. But at the moment with PCF, it's very difficult to make it easy to configure. It's like you get this properties panel, and in model-driven apps, it's still in the classic experience. I mean, and it's
And it's
it looks
really,
and it's hidden, and it looks really ugly. Let's face it. I mean, it's like, what is that? These weird drop downs that look like they're out of the 1990s. But they probably are out of the 1990s. And then you got in Canvas, you've got the properties panel, which is sort of it doesn't have the same functionality as the first party controls. Like, you can't create a color picker and you can't lay it out in a nice way. So I want that. I want to be able to say as a control author, this is how I would make my experience for the maker, to make it really easy for them to configure my control. That's.
We should have a little respect for the age of the customizing over the classic one. That's a problem.
Respect.
Respect. It's not about being ugly or not ugly. It's about taking ages to load. That's my problem.
Efficiency.
I don't care if it's ugly.
Am I being ageist to the classic the classic UI? Is that what it is? You're too slow and ugly because you're old. That's I'm suddenly just getting into a whole deep water here that I didn't really expect to get into. It's like,
well, Scott, maybe that's your next XRM Toolbox tool. You could go and create a tool that allows you to, once you put it on the form, you can go and open your tool and select it and configure it through whatever better interface you can come up with.
Yeah, I don't know. I want makers to be able to do it without opening the XRM Toolbox. I want to be able to make it sort of just seamless and just, yeah.
I mean, I assume that wouldn't be that big of a deal, or would be a pretty big deal. But then there was this tool for the toolbox called the ribbon workbench, and that thing, like, everyone's used that thing. Makers of them like crazy.
Yeah, well, it was only meant to be a stopgap until the commanding, just the longest stopgap in the now we've got the new commanding. But I think you're right, Diana. You were absolutely right. Of course, I was speaking out of line. We do have to have respect for the classic UI and the history where it came from, and let's face it, if it weren't for the model driven classic, we wouldn't have PCF in the first place, right? Because that's where it came from. So yes, I stand corrected, and I apologize profusely to the classic UI.
I don't say we shouldn't move on. I just say we should have respect for a software who lasted how many years? It was
10, I don't 15? Know. Yeah, something like that. Yes. Yeah, we're gonna have to have a little ceremony, aren't we, with the ultimate demise. we can all prepare some words to say.
We'll do a ceremony for that, and if we ever have one where they get rid of on-prem, like, we'll have Gus Gonzalez on, and he'll do something about, because he's been speaking like, why do we have on-prem? Like, so years now, years.
Yes, exactly. But Jonas has been talking about whether or not they ever get rid of fetch XML for a long time, and they're never going to get rid of fetch XML, are they? Let's face it.
Speaking of Jonas, did you see his tweet today?
I didn't see his tweet today, but I saw it yesterday where he's back in the office doing regularly, working properly. That was yesterday.
He actually built his first plugin using early binding, and it worked. Like, I was like, who are you? What have you done to Jonas? Like, this is
I never thought I would see the day ever. What? Jonas and early binding? What is the world coming to? The very fabric of my reality is crumbling. Maybe we need to get Jonas on and talk, to kind of walk us through that experience, and
Yeah, I tweeted. I was like, I think I'm going to dedicate a whole XR Toolbox episode to this, because this is a historical moment. Like, what happened? And how did it go? How did you feel afterwards? Were you able to sleep at night?
Maybe he's converted.
Yes.
So, Diana, are you early bound or late bound? Are you?
I'm a late bound.
Okay. You spend most of your time on the UI, so
That was just dismissing you now. He was like,
she can be the yin to my yang in that. I don't spend a lot of time in the UI. So. Oh man. Well, then we've gone through a couple of your tools, kind of the things you've done, and the improvements that come with the virtual DOM here, the virtual PCF controls. Anything that we're missing? Anything else that you think we should our listeners would like to hear, or that you wanted to bring up?
Oh, there are actually a lot of small features that stops me on the way. Like for instance, we can define for the PCF the possibility. So we have the possibility for a property to work with more data types. That one we cannot use in Canvas apps. And so I have the control basically working, but I cannot use it in custom page because I cannot import it. And I really love the possibility the dataset offers. So editing, saving. There are a few points I don't really understand why, for instance, I cannot create or delete records using the dataset itself. But the feature, it's really great. And when I think about custom pages, being able to, just like in Canvas app, to work with something else, that Dataverse, and still being able to save that data using just the PCF SDK, that's mind-blowing. So that's something I don't know if that's in GA and if it should work for custom pages. But I've tried with some Boolean and it worked for me. And I hope that will come in the future to being able to use for more data types. That would be great too. And I've also saw the possibility to work with ribbon. So being inside the dataset PCF, you can retrieve the ribbon and being able to apply it. And that's also for me, that's a huge step. I think it's not working completely, but I'm on the way to find it out because I'm somebody that I don't like to have too many JSON configurations. So that's what I like in PCF. I have the possibility to allow the maker to choose from some options or stuff like that. And I don't like to define JSON on top of that and have to force the maker to make a JSON. So that way we would be able to retrieve the ribbon, so the ribbon commands, and apply them. And so we don't have to customize some buttons inside the PCF. And that's also huge. So it's not only what I wish, I'm also excited about the possibilities. So I think when everything will work, would be really great. And theming, that's also something that I'm really looking forward to be able to apply it to the PCFs.
So theming, like apply it for your own PCF control, or to use theming from the system and apply it to your, like, what do you mean by that?
To use one from the system.
Okay.
Because right now it's pretty much work to retrieve the theme, to apply it, and to have it in a really consistent way.
Well, when you find all of those things out, and that's going to be the next chapters, isn't it? In the epic of your, that's just going to be. I can't wait to read them. Are you going to be? Are you doing any speaking at any conferences soon?
Yes, I think the next will be the developer bootcamp. That will be this month already.
Have you gotten an email on that?
Yes,
about when it's due, or what background, or what PowerPoint template to use? I don't think I've gotten anything on that, and I'm like.
There was an email, and I'm happy to use my own, so that's okay.
Unless somebody tells you otherwise.
Okay, cool. Usually I get like hey, here's your due date, here's the time you're doing. I haven't gotten any of that yet. Okay, I was just wondering. I'll go contact the people. Sorry. Keep on going. What else are you speaking of?
I'm going to talk about deep dive in dataset PCF. So some stuff we talked already today, and maybe some examples there and stuff like that.
Oh, awesome.
Well, yeah, definitely not to be missed if you're doing any PCF, or if you've not done any PCF and you just want to see the awesomeness that of Diana's controls. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Diana, I appreciate your time with us today. Thanks for making time on this wonderful Friday we have here, and appreciate you documenting everything very well in your blog and your narrative story. I know Scott gets all excited about that, so and yeah, I do too. It's much nicer to read something that's interesting than it is something that you're like, what, where, what, huh? So yes, that's always a very nice ability or possessing talent, skill. There we go. I couldn't think of words.
Yes.
English. It's like it's my second language or something. Anyway.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for coming on, and we appreciate that. So Scott, actually no. What am I doing? I'm going to order here. Diana, how can our listeners get hold of you if they want to ask more questions or follow you? What's the best way that your presence is online?
So you can reach me on Twitter or LinkedIn, but also in the community forum. So I try to look, maybe not every day, but as soon as possible, and answer the question as good as I can in the product forum.
Cool. Well, Scott, that's how our listeners can get hold of our guests. How can our listeners get hold of us?
Well, Daryl, you can email us at cast@xrmtoolbox.com, or you can get us on social media at xrmtoolcast, and we'd love to hear from you. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, Diana, and hearing about all of your exciting plans.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl and Scott Darrell, produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @XRM Toolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.